Thanks so much for joining me today. This is
Absolutely.
Antiesha Brown. I met her. She was a classmate of mine back at the University of New Mexico in our sport administration graduate program, and been a lot of different places, done a lot of different things through sport. Excited to interview today for sure. And people hate this question, but I put the question in because a lot of our male counterparts have no issues pumping themselves up and saying the things that they've accomplished. And I feel like our athletes that are coming up in the world need to recognize that they can be confident enough to talk about themselves and things that they've done and where they've been. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, so with that, I'm gonna start the questions off with, basically you've done amazing things both at the amateur and the professional level. Talk to us a little about some of your accomplishments.
I'm gonna grab the bull by the horns. So I've never won a championship. So I just want to get that out of the way. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, you can feel the heartbreak still.
Yes.
Um, but I was a 3 point or three sport athlete back in high school. Did win a couple of championships in track in high school, but I wasn't a fan of track, so it didn't really count in my book. Went to college, played about a season at Texas Tech, and then transferred to UNM spring of 2012. Won newcomer of the year there, or six man of the year there, and a couple of in season accolades. Fell short in the championship, so can't say I was a champion in that respect. Went overseas, played a few seasons out there, and just enjoyed it. So not many accomplishments, I guess, but definitely made it to an elite level. So
Absolutely. And I think they're accomplishments. I mean, how many people can say that they've played, first of all, at the collegiate level, and I think,
right.
you know, uh, for sure, one of the top universities, and then to actually say that you were able to go and play overseas, like that's a big deal. You didn't end at the 4 years. You actually got to keep
Right.
going. So,
Right.
hey,
Exactly.
and then, we're going to talk a little bit more a little bit later, but just like, then being African American, being woman, there's not that many opportunities even further. So the fact that you're able to do that,
Absolutely.
I applaud it, and so, along the same lines of that, being Black, being a woman, tell us a little bit about maybe what makes you vocal about women in leadership positions.
I mean, for me personally, it's one of those things where those are two things that I cannot change,
Mm,
you know, and more times than not, it's taken at face value,
mm,
you know. Everything else can kind of be figured out later on or whatever, but those are two things of myself that it'll never change.
right.
So I have to be confident in that and speak out on anything that goes against that,
Mm,
or bring awareness on just trying to get equal rights on both ends, you
yeah.
know what I mean, with my race and my sex. So it's one of those things where, again, I can't change those things. So I'm proud to be Black. I'm proud to be a woman. And now, just we just got to catch everything up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's true. And I mean, I'm not going to go on this rant right now, but in some regard, it's kind of unfair basically that we have that face value that people automatically assume certain things, right? And
Right.
we might not have wanted to pick up that hat. We might not have wanted to pick up that duty to be the person that's a spokesperson for that. But
Right.
at the end of the day, we had to do it. And I think as athletes, in a lot of ways, I think sometimes us females have to do the same thing. And I feel like that's in part why I wanted to start this program, is because I want our athletes to recognize that, first of all, they're destined for way more than just being athletes, but that
Right.
if you had to speak out about certain rights or things that you deserve, like uniforms and locker rooms and all the other stuff, that like you do it because it's necessary, and you want to make sure that happens for the person that's behind you. And so, yes. So on that note,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
um, tell us a little bit about some of the barriers that you faced, like being a female athlete, and then maybe what were some ways that you overcame those barriers?
I would say one of the major barriers, in my humble opinion, would be resources. You know, I think about my basketball career as a whole. In high school, you didn't really have many places where it was just all girls playing basketball. You know, that was usually grown men, young men, teenagers, you know, things like that, not necessarily our demographic or a demographic that our parents would want us around, you know? So I think it's tough finding those resources that are able to handle young female athletes and lead them in the right direction and, you know, just make everyone comfortable in that. So I would say that would be a major barrier. And then just, you know, not being taken seriously sometimes. You know, it's your male counterpart, so mine, men's basketball, it's so much more admired, you know, and it's till this day you'll see a highlight of the WNBA and there's always that sandwich joke. You know, there's always that, you know, and it's just like, we're in 2021 now. You know, it shouldn't be one of those things where we're still reverting back to the societal pressures of women in the 1950s.
Right.
So I think that's kind of one of the harder things, is just known, you know, not being taken as seriously as your male counterparts while putting in the same amount of work.
That's real. And I think that crosses over many things, you know, career, family, all of that. So absolutely. And so like along the same lines of you talking about some of those barriers, you know, that are resource related, and then tell me a little bit about like just transitioning from one of your schools to another. Like what was maybe some of the things that you had to go through that made you ultimately made that decision to go from Texas, you said Texas Tech, right?
Yeah.
To the University of New Mexico. What was what made you make that decision?
You know, it was two things. First, it was coming to the reality of the situation. So I was class of 2010. The 2009 class had 5 guards. And then me coming in the year after as a single guard. You know, I wasn't going to get any playing time until my senior year. And that's not, you know, saying that there's not a superstar freshman that comes in starting, you know? So it wasn't until I realized that, and again, I didn't really have much help navigating that, doing that research, you know what I mean? I just took it. And so whenever I came to that realization, you know, I had to have that reflective moment where you say, hey, you know, Tech, you guys upset the #1 school in the country your freshman year. You guys are in the Big 12, all these things. Do you want to just stay with that, be chartered everywhere, or do you want to compete? Do you want to feel like you're a part of something? Do you want to feel like you're leading something? And, you know, not to say that I couldn't have done those things at Tech, but that'll bring me to my second point. It wasn't a great environment either, you know, with the staff that was around, and, you know, and not to say that they were negligent, but they could have taken better care of a lot of situations. And, you know, for me, my parents have always instilled to trust my gut, you know, and my gut was telling me this is not good for you. I was having a hard time sleeping. You know, I wasn't going to class. I just, you know, felt like a robot almost. And it was just so out of touch with how, you know, goofy and everything that I am. Like I couldn't recognize myself. And so I had to, you know, come to terms with what would make me happy. And, you know, at that time I wasn't thinking about going pro, you know what I mean? I wanted to have a good experience.
Absolutely.
You know, so that was what it came down to, is just my overall happiness. You know, you have to be somewhat happy to get through what you do.
I think that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, for real. For real.
Yeah. And you know, like we learn, hopefully our athletes learn from the stories that we tell. And so I think that right there was a really good example of a couple of things. The fact that like, you know, recognizing that if you can have if you can find the resources that'll help you navigate through that beginning process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're going through that beginning process, trying not to chase so much in the name or the division, but to chase more into what you need, right, to be successful and compete at that level. And you know, as a part of our program, we do a DISC personality test, and so each of our athletes will complete the test, and we kind of talk a little bit about, you know, some of your behavioral traits, some of your strengths, some of the things that like
Right.
help you to move in a way that are going to help you to be better in communication, better at just being able to identify your needs and what you want out of something.
Right.
And I think it's a crucial part in those types of decisions, those big decisions that you're going to make that a lot of the other recruiting services don't necessarily have. And I think it's going to be a lot beneficial because again, like you'll know, like, okay, if I watch this coaching staff and I can see basically how they structure things. And,
Right.
you know, you start to ask questions maybe to the team if you get that close, but then realizing that
Exactly.
like, as you're having these conversations, you're like, okay, well, that might be a red flag. Like, I know I want to go to the school
Yeah.
because of the name. I want to wear the name on the chest. I want to be on
But you
TV.
have
I
to
want to do
watch.
this. But it's a reality. And I think looking at how many guards they have, like you said, that's super
Right.
important. It's a good thing that you mentioned, like I said, all of those things. And so thanks for sharing that. Absolutely. So then if you think about, I don't know if you've had like any mentors growing up or anything like that, but maybe talk to us a little bit about like, if you do have a mentor, like how they helped you like reach certain goals, like if you didn't have them, like what the difference would be and things like that.
So I was lucky enough. I had a coach in high school, and Coach Downing, and she was like this little itty bitty 5'2", didn't weigh more than a buck. I mean, and she was black. And so, you know, I went to high school in Clovis.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's not very many
Uh-huh.
black folks there. You know, I'm going to keep it a bean.
Yeah.
And she just right away took me under her wing. I mean, she saw me in 8th grade, I think, and I was under her wing that next summer. And she just did such a good job of keeping me grounded. You know, her saying, stay humble. No matter what, stay humble. You know, and I think her lessons just on the court and off the court were super beneficial because, you know, my parents, you know, they weren't superstar athletes or anything. They didn't necessarily even push me to do sports. You know, my dad was Air Force. My mom was a early childhood intervention specialist. So they kind of had their careers. So they're just like, do what you want, you know, whatever you have a passion for, do it.
Yeah.
So they couldn't help me navigate basketball and all the things that I was going through. They couldn't necessarily help me, you know, understand why I thought my coach was being so awful, you know, because, you know, they're not there. They don't, you know what's going on. They don't know the recruiting process. They don't know people are watching your body language and just little nuances of growing into an elite athlete that Coach Brown really helped me with. And, you know, she just, you know, as Black women, we are very, very adamant whenever we're adamant. And she was adamant on getting me to college, you know, and getting me to college on a scholarship, more so. And all the while not losing myself, helping me, you know, stay humble and not get too much dip on my chip, you know.
I'm gonna use all these quotes. I love it. I love it. And I say, like, that's awesome. And I mean, I think you're right. Like, so in one way, you're kind of blessed, like that you didn't have a family where they were necessarily pushing you athletically so much, right? They're supporting you,
Right.
but they weren't
All
making it your
academically.
identity, right?
Right. Right.
But having someone that recognizes that you have some sort of talent and that let's embark on this journey and let's see if we can get something out of it. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
And so in a lot of ways, I think you have a reverse system than a lot of, I feel like our softball parents are, some of them are intense, you know, and I feel like in
I
some
can
ways either
imagine.
they're trying to live through their kids, or they, you know, they think they want the best for them, but they don't recognize how
Right.
pushing them in certain ways is kind of changing that identity and who they are, you
Right.
know. And
It's the same on this side. I
yeah,
mean, you have crazy parents, you have intense, the dreamers who were high school
yeah.
varsity and now they want their kid to go to college, and I mean it's real. It's real.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so speaking of that, like maybe tell me, or maybe if you have any, what advice would you give to parents, just around the idea of being able to support your athletes in a way that can push them to be successful in sport, but just like also honing in on the idea that they're
Right.
destined for
Still
more,
the
that bigger
parent.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I had a chance to tell parents something, and sorry, my dog is being obnoxious right now.
No way.
I would tell parents to let their kid do their thing. You know, let that sport be their space to
Right.
be the best version of themselves, you know. And I can think of plenty of stories of parents just kind of almost not validating their kid that they're still doing okay, even though they're not the star,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and being confident with whatever role that they have. And just, again, let them enjoy it. Let that be their free space. Let them take out whatever angst or emotions or passion, whatever, love for the game, and just let it be that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you know, burnout is a real thing.
Real thing.
And, you know, kids think so highly of their parents. You know, I've seen kids, you know, catch the disappointment of their parents. And it's heartbreaking, you know, like
Yes.
my dad or my mom is disappointed in me because I didn't perform well.
Yeah.
And, you know, like that's not a great way to feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, so just along those same lines, I think it's, you mentioned the word confidence in there a little bit. And I think the confidence is definitely a buzzword, but I think it's a very important and valuable word that our athletes in some ways need to have. But I want them to have confidence in their preparation, in who they are, in their why, versus in, you know, I scored 60 points that day, you know. And so, you know, maybe what advice or any things that you think of that can help build confidence in our female athletes?
I would just say time perfecting your craft. You know, one way that I was able to build confidence was because I knew I was putting time into the gym.
Yeah.
Like, you could debate me about anything except that, you know? So that's where my confidence grew. I know I can hit this shot, hit it a million times in the off hours, you know, the grind while they sleep type energy. And so the more time that you spend perfecting your craft, learning your craft, raising your IQ, watching elite players, watching tutorials, everything, those things help you grow. And whenever you grow, that's where that confidence can easily come from. So I would just say perfect your craft.
Absolutely.
If you're going to do it, you might as well be the best at it.
Yes. For sure. And I think that's good advice. Like I was saying earlier that I tried to do a seminar on confidence a couple weeks ago. And, you know, my number one was, you know, trying to determine what your why is. What's the real reason that you're doing this? Because you're going to need to put in those hours and that work. And, you know, you've pointed out in that last statement so many ways that an athlete can get better outside of just getting on the floor, you know? And so, watching the game, looking at elite players, watching film, like, taking the time to just perfect your craft in so many different ways. And so if you don't recognize that that's your why, and that's really what you need to be doing, like, if you don't believe that's your why, like, I don't know if I really want to play at college, then like, it's time to remove that investment. But if you do, like, you got to recognize what it takes,
because you have to dig deep. I mean, you have to have a deep reason why, because there's going to be adversities that you face that make you dig deep, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad that you said that, because I was just thinking about even this transitioning from high school, travel ball, to, college, and then professional. What were some of those like hard struggles that you had to face in like transitioning between those levels?
So my hardest transition, or I would say next to the hardest transition, was high school to college, because that's whenever the reality set in. Like, oh, I'm out my mama house. Like, these coaches want me to be at the gym ready to go at 6:45.
Yeah.
I mean, just all these new realities that you face. And, you're meeting new people who are in different stages of their life. We're all learning each other, and it's always an interesting environment when a bunch of women are learning their self and each other and all that stuff. Things can get pretty heated sometimes. And so that transition was tough. And I also played a post in high school, because I lived in New Mexico.
Yeah.
So I was only 5'8" at the time. Right. I was only 5'8" at the time, but at that point I'm Shaq. So so I didn't know that there was something wrong with that until, later I learned, like, I'll be a guard in college. So I was behind the curve. Wow. And whenever I got to Tech, that curve became real clear, real quick. So that was a hard transition. But I think the hardest transition was from college to pro. Okay. It's two different worlds. Right. And, not only the physical preparation for it, but the mental preparation for it. I had another mentor, Coach Brown, and she played pro for like 14 years, coached at Tech. Like, she just had the resume. So she was a dog. And she asked me, she said, "You want to go pro?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "All right. So we got at least 3 sessions a week at 6:30 to 8 a.m. You have to get table stretched 3 times a week. You have to get in the cold tub at least 4 times a week. You need to do extra like all these different things that I had to get my body ready for, before going to an elite level. And that was hard. It was gut wrenching, because doing that on top of being a team captain, on top of being in grad school, on top of trying to win and trying to be a team player, and also not lose sight of your team and the now for your intentions later. For sure. So that was the physical part, and the mental part was just, it's different over there. Yeah. It's different whenever you're an adult now, and I was 23. Yeah, about 23 whenever I started my first season. And, in college, it's yes, ma'am, no, sir. Yeah. You're not talking back. You're not even going to breathe wrong around your coaches. You know what I mean? But out there, it's back and forth, because you have to defend yourself. True. Okay. You don't get the benefit of the doubt of, oh, classes are hard this semester, or, oh, how they, the childlike ways that the NCAA treats you. It's, no, you're grown. So unless you want to get sent home, you better give us 3 good reasons why you should stay. And it's the challenging part. It's I have to represent myself. I have to tell my agent as an adult, hey, this is what's going on in this program, or, just having to really look out for yourself
Yeah.
and realize, oh, this is how I'm going to pay my bills and eat. And so, you know, it's all performance based.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't get that same benefit of the doubt.
Right. Wow. Okay. Yes, that I would say that would be a challenge, and that would be definitely be tough. And you know, just again talking about us as women and fighting for ourselves. I feel like you got some real training for like your career. You know, it's along the same lines. It's like, hey, if I don't speak up for myself to my boss or my superiors, you know, where am I going to get, you know, how far am I going to get? Because there's going to be moments where you got to actually fight for yourself. You got to negotiate with for better, you know, and
Right.
you're right. I think a lot of times in college, you don't get that training, you know, and so
No, not at all.
that's true. And so when you talk about the mental side a little bit, you know, I feel like right now everybody is really big on like peak performance training and mental performance training. And did you have to do any of that when you were in college or playing professional at all, or any
You
routines
know,
or habits you created?
I would say I wanted the mental edge in college.
Yeah.
You know, I was the only senior on my team. So I felt like I had to be steady. So, you know, I really took and paid close attention to, okay, I'm going to watch more film. Okay, I'm going to learn these plays better so we can find loopholes and play. You know what I mean? I was more
Yeah.
serious. I felt like
Yeah.
the big sister. Like, we're going to win no matter what. I don't care. I'm not going out my senior year like this.
Yeah.
Like, I was on some Michael Jordan stuff. You know what I mean? Like, just his attitude towards his teammates, you know, because I wanted to win that bad. And my senior year, we had a rocky start. You know, I don't know if you remember, I think we were 1-7. We were playing top 25 teams. So we're playing DePaul and getting full court press for 40 minutes and Texas A&M. So it was really, you know, a tough season. And that's whenever I had to focus on my mentality.
Right.
You know, I had to be okay all the time because, you know, I have 5 freshmen and 6 sophomore, you know what I mean? So really just trying to be that example and showing them this is mental toughness, you know, like you can do it. Like, we can do it. We just have to be in tune, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely, for sure. And I think what you just described was like leadership, taking that leadership and that accountability for your team. And you know, so basically one of my questions was, when you think about leadership, you know, what comes to mind, and do you think that athletics can help develop that skill set? And so, you know, you kind of answered it, but anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, leadership, success, all those things.
Yeah.
I think that the way athletics helps with the leadership aspect of it is you learn how to take accountability. And accountability is huge in leadership because you also have to, you know, show people around you, okay, I'm susceptible to mistakes, as we all are.
Yeah.
But no matter what, no matter whose fault it is, whatever, we just have one common goal that we need to meet. And I feel like a true leader has that attitude. Like, all right, let's just get through it and let's keep moving forward. I think that is always great leaders, you know, they're the ones pulling your head back to the prize, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And you mentioned success too. So that was you know, it's very true. I think they go hand in hand in a lot of ways. And you know, I guess I did want to ask the question kind of basically on the idea that a lot of times we find success in the fact that like we won a championship or things like that. But I see success in even how you were able to continue to push through and forward with your team when you were 1-7 and things like that. And so, you know, how can we help our athletes, our parents, our coaches even redefine success?
I think the way of doing that is having everyone define their own perspective of success.
I like
You know,
that.
I think we push this narrative that, again, success means championship, success means this, which in some respect it does. You know what I mean? But in what we're dealing with now, young athletes, female athletes, we're talking about high school, you know, not the NBA finals.
Right.
So I think by having someone define their own success, that's where they'll find their motivations. You know, I'm not going to be as motivated for your definition of success, which just means, oh, college, whatever. Oh, yeah, you can get your college paid for. I'm like, okay, cool. But until I realized, oh, I can go to college and my parents don't have to pay for me. So my parents can enjoy this money. My parents don't have to worry about their youngest kid and going to college. Sure. And so whenever I define that as my success, that's where the motivation came from. So I think having someone define their own way of success will make those other things fall in line, and they will become successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm gonna wrap it up here in a minute. I got about 3 more questions for you. You know, I definitely appreciate your time. And, you know, if you could give your high school age self some advice that could help you now in life, what would that be?
I would honestly tell my high school self, do everything the way you thought you were gonna do it. You know, I think everything that has happened to me has happened for a specific reason and has become a pivotal moment in my life. You know, I wanted to, you know, just follow myself and what my gut said. So I would tell myself, you trusted your gut, so you got where you needed to be.
I love it. I love that. I love that. And then, you know, just because you've played at different levels and, you know, now you are getting a little bit older, you ain't old, but you get a little bit older. You know, when you are out there watching players play now, you know, what are maybe some things that stand out to you, positive or negative, like that our high school athletes need to recognize, either that are successes that they're doing or maybe some things that they should probably stop doing?
Phew. I do see the skill level being a little bit higher in athletes these days, and I think that's because of the resources that are available now. You know, like I'm sure whenever you were playing softball in 9th grade, you didn't have trainers and, you know, things like that you could call. Nowadays, you could find a specialist at a reasonable, sometimes, price. So you do see that difference in skill, but it's that grit that I feel like is missing. You know, I feel like there's a lot of puppies, you know, that could be dogs. It's like, oh, y'all could be, but you know, you don't want them to fold. And I feel like it's easier for players nowadays to fold. And I think that's for a number of reasons. You know, I think I think high schoolers nowadays take themselves too seriously. You know, where we in high school, it was like, let me just try out for the team, you know. You know, nowadays you have to worry about social media and being, you know, on someone's highlight tape and, you know, all that different stuff where you're not as relaxed in what you're doing. So that would be the key differences I see.
Absolutely. It's that fear of failure, that perfectionism. It's all those things. It's so heavy right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And so my final question is, so I have these sayings, you know, destined for more, and I have another one where I want my female athletes to own their power in the world, right? And so pushing past high school, pushing back past wanting to play in college, let's talk about owning my career, my successes in life, my growth, my communication, my relationships, everything. So what would you think would be one trait that every athlete should have to own their power in the world?
I think this was the one I got stumped on. I would say I would say confidence,
Okay.
And with my definition of confidence, obviously you gain confidence by perfecting your craft.
Right.
And so I think that in order for us to be exceptional, we got to put in the work. We have to perfect our craft. And once we do that, we can't be stopped,
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't think of any woman that has not been able to achieve what she made her mind up to achieve. And so I would think that just that confidence in yourself, knowing that if I put in the work, the hours, if 1 + 1 = 2, if I put in the work and the hours and perfect my craft,
yes,
that's going to equal success. And it may not even equal the same success that you initially thought of, So, I mean, I'll leave it at that.
Girl, you're preaching tonight.
Hey, don't start to get me hot, man.
I love it. Well, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. I don't know. I love to, like I said, I think athletes have to hear from people, who have been there, who've done that. There's a big thing from the seminar I watched called We Coach. And, one of the things that the person said was, see her, be her, so it's the idea of let our athletes see her so they could be her. And so, yeah, I'm just grateful for you. And yeah, thanks so much again.
Absolutely. Anytime. Let me know what you need.
For sure. All right. I am going to stop the recording.